All right, guys. Sorry, I'm still carrying my machine over here, getting lights turned on and stuff. Um, we're going to be looking here in Romans chapter 2 some more. We're going to actually finish up chapter 2 today. Chapter 2 has been all about God's judgment, God's wrath, God's punishment against sin, all that kind of stuff. And we'll finish it today. Let me get a chair here. I was working in the front office here, and I had everything ready to go, and I just didn't realize what time it was. I was right in the middle of some emails, and all of a sudden I looked up, and it's 12 o'clock. So here we are. We're going to do it. Romans chapter 2. We have looked at this. We had it in a sermon yesterday, of course, and we're going to finish through it today. It's verses 17 through the end through 29, 17 through 29. Okay. And it reiterates a lot of the stuff that we saw in the first half of chapter 2, just in different ways. And you'll have to get some context here. So you're going to get a little bit of a early church history lesson with this today. But Paul, of course, wrote the letter Romans to the church in Rome. We know that from the first opening couple verses of Romans. To all those who are in Rome, loved by God, chapter 1. Anyway, he's writing to Rome, and the Roman church was a church that had a lot of Jews in it and a lot of Romans in it, a lot of Gentiles, okay, called Greeks, called Romans, called Gentiles, whatever. And Paul is writing to this church to indicate to them that, listen, Jesus is all you need. Remember, the theme of Romans is that God's goodness, God's righteousness is clear, it's obvious, it's evident. He demonstrates it. Okay? God's righteousness and God's wrath, as we have seen, really, chapter 1, 2, and 3 are mostly about how God's wrath is clearly seen and evident. But primarily, this is all about God being obvious. And so if God's so obvious, if God's so clearly seen, how come for thousands of years, your Old Testament worth of stuff, all this, if God's so obvious, how come, what about all the Gentiles? The vast majority of the human race wasn't involved with God in a personal, direct way like his chosen people, Israel, were. So what's up with that? Well, Paul is answering that in chapter 2 here, and he's answering it to the church in Rome because the church in Rome was big, had a lot of people in it, and a lot of them were Jewish and a lot of them were not. And he's trying to say, look, you're all one if you're in Christ. You're all, it doesn't matter. God's goodness, God's righteousness is big enough that it covers all of this. So that's what he says, and I'll read to you some parts of it here. Verse 17. But if you call yourself a Jew and rely upon the law and boast in God and know his will and approve what is excellent because you're instructed by the law, and if you're sure that you yourself are a guide to the blind, a light to those who are in darkness, an instructor of the foolish, a teacher of the immature, having in the law the embodiment of knowledge and the truth, you then who teach another, do you not teach yourself? And he's going to carry on from there. He's talking to the Jews off the bat here, as you can tell. If you call yourself a Jew and rely upon the law, the Jews in Paul's day and modern days too, whatever, but obviously he's talking to ancient Jews in the time of the Roman Empire. They would have said, yeah, we are the light to those who are in darkness. We're the ones. We've got the law. We've got the Old Testament. God chose us. We're his chosen people. Everybody else walks in darkness. We walk in the light. God spoke to us. He's the one who gave us Moses and the Ten Commandments. He's the one who gave us the covenants, the law, the kings, the borders of Israel, all this. It's ours. We're God's chosen people. Take it or leave it. The Old Testament is so clear on that. It's just obvious. And so Paul starts with them and he says, look, you guys say you're God's chosen people? All right then, let's look at this. And he says, do you not teach you who teach others, do you not teach yourself? You who teach the one should not steal, do you steal? You say the one should not commit adultery, do you commit adultery? You abhor idols, do you rob temples? He goes on, you know the rules, so do you keep them? Do you obey the rules, or what? And then he says, verse 23, you who boast in the law, they're so proud of their heritage, their Old Testament heritage. You who boast in the law, do you dishonor God by breaking the law? And he says, as it is written, my name is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you. Okay? If you're the representative of God, which Jews obviously were all throughout history up until Jesus, they were God's chosen people. Okay, so if they do a bad job, it causes God's name to be blasphemed. Oh, you're God's chosen people and you act like that? That's what he's saying, okay? And then he goes on, circumcision. That's one of the main signs. That's one of the main things that they hold as important. It's of value if you obey the law. But look, if you're just doing outwardly stuff, it's useless. Okay. And he goes on, and in verse 27 through the end, he's going to say that, look, people can honor God better who don't even know the law, who aren't Jewish. Like, that stuff's external. All these rituals you go through, the circumcision that he talks about, like, all that's just playing religious games. And what matters so much more is the circumcision of the heart, he said, whose praise is not from men but from God, people who are living to please God and not others. And that's the problem with so much of what is called religion in Christianity and everywhere else. So much of it is just playing games. It's just putting on a show. It's seeing how much you can impress somebody else. And the book of Romans cuts straight through that. Look, that's not what it's about. That's not what we're here for. And so the challenge for us modern day, like I said, that's a history lesson. That's old school, ancient Roman Empire, early church history stuff. Okay? I don't know anybody who's having that debate right now. Are the Jews better than the Gentiles? I just don't, that's not a thing right now, at least not in my circles. However, the principle is absolutely a thing. I don't know how many people tell me, I'm going to go to church next week. Next week's the day I'm going to do it. Sorry, I didn't get to church last week. As though showing up in church somehow makes you right with God, or somehow like apologizing to the pastor about it makes it okay or something, as though that has anything to do with it. Okay, come to church because church draws you closer to Jesus. Don't apologize to me if you miss church. That just means that when you are here, you're putting on a show by trying to impress me or something. All right, that's not how it works. Because what do I care? I mean, I care. I care about you. I hope you come to church because I care about your soul. I care what's going on, but I don't care like personally. Like, you don't need to apologize to me, and you don't need to apologize to God. You need to get right with God, and you need to stop putting on a show. All right, and it's easy to put on a show. We had a kids' parenting meeting yesterday, and we talked about the little pep talk, apparently, that a lot of parents give with their kids before they go out to eat or something. And you sit down before you get out of the car and you tell them, hey, kids, when we get out of the car, we're going to have to all behave here because we're trying to basically put on a show, teaching them that they're the sorts of things that they might get away with at home, they're not allowed to do out in public. And, we're training kids how to act in public, and it matters. Okay, but it was kind of funny. I thought we were the only family that had to do that with our kids, and apparently everyone else does. But listen, don't play that game with God. God knows what you're like out in public and what you're like in private. Like, what's the point of playing religious games and acting like one thing here and a different thing there? Honestly, what is the point of that? Who are you trying to fool? The only thing you're fooling is yourself, because who cares what other people think? None of those people own heaven. None of those people sit on the throne room of heaven. Nobody does except God, and least of all you and I. So let's not play religious games, okay? It says, no one is a Jew who is merely a Jew outwardly. A Jew, he's using this to mean somebody who's right with God. Somebody who's right with God is not merely right with God outwardly, nor is it outward and physical. Rather, it is one who is inward, and the circumcision is a matter of the heart by the Spirit, not by the letter. His praise is not from men, but from God. So let's not play. Let's not do that. Let's not do outward stuff. places that you go, the things that you say in different groups of people. Everything you do, God is watching. It's not like he only watches what you do when you're in church. Like you walk in the room, okay, now God's watching me. Now I'm gonna behave, gonna act like this, and sit really still. And if my kids wiggle, I'm gonna get mad at them because God's watching them here. But at home, we just do whatever we please. And in the car ride here, we do whatever we please. In the car ride out of here, we do what we please. And at work, we do what we please. Because God only watches at church. Like, it's nonsense. And I think everybody knows it's nonsense, and yet wind up doing it anyway. So don't do that. You're living your life. You're not going to please God. You're not going to impress him by putting on a show on certain issues and leaving the other ones off to the side. It's not going to work. All right. I think we're all guilty of that in some way or other, and I'm here to just prick that and pop that balloon with a needle here. Like, just don't play that game. Who cares if you impress the pastor? Who cares if you impress some guy at church or some total stranger you don't even know? Like, who cares? Don't let alone fooling yourself. You might fool me. What do I know? I'm just a guy. You come up to me and tell me some stuff that sounds good, and I'll say, hey, sounds good. And I'll go home and think, hey, that guy seems to be walking with God. What do I know? I know what you tell me. That's all I know. You're not going to, who cares if you impress me? The danger is where you're fooling yourself into thinking that somehow you must be doing it right because you impressed the pastor or some guy at church or something. God's watching. God knows the whole thing. Let's not play games. All right. God bless you. We're going to be in chapter 3 tomorrow. Chapter 3, man, I told you, chapters 1, 2, and 3 are hard. They are in your face with your sin. And chapter 3 is more of the same, although partway through it turns to the grace of God. But anyway, I'll see you tomorrow right at noon. God bless.